So I've got a question: what happens if staff can't come in because of train strikes? Well, that's a really good question. Now, staff and their method of transport isn't an employer's concern, and what I mean by that is you are not responsible for what method of transport they choose to take to get to work. So some people will obviously use public transport. They'll take the bus, the trains, trams in some parts of the UK. Other people, they walk, they'll get a lift, they'll drive, they'll use a taxi, they'll ride a bike, they'll bring a car. And you are not responsible for that, and you've never been responsible for that as an employer. Now, obviously, a responsible employer, a sensible employer at times of train strikes, tries to find out what methods of transport their staff use, because it's much better that you are involved in the conversation about trying to find alternatives than obviously someone assumes that their absence will not be an issue and you will carry on. So there's two things that we've been suggesting that employers do this week. The first of all is to find out what customer demand will be given the train strikes. Will it go down on the days of the strikes? We do know that obviously from yesterday there was evidence to suggest that people didn't necessarily go onto the roads, or at least it wasn't particularly high numbers of people went onto the roads that would have otherwise took the train. So are people sort of taking the view that if the service is going to be disrupted, then they will not use the service? And is that going to happen to you? So finding out from your parents, is there going to be a decline in use of the service on the strike days? Because if you've got a decline in use of the service, you don't need so many staff. So the two things do go together. And then speaking to your staff and finding out obviously how they anticipate being impacted by the strikes. So if they're people that never catch a train but always catch a bus, how are they working around mitigating the impact of buses being busier than they would normally, overcrowding, perhaps needing to wait longer for a bus than they might otherwise, finding that they can't get on a bus because it's full? Have they thought about how that's going to work? And again, it's not for you to sort out, but it's a responsible employer that asks the question, what have you done to mitigate the impact of the strike on those days? And if somebody is saying to you, there isn't another method of transport other than the train for me to come into work, and that will be true of some people, it's what alternatives are there? Is there an alternative for them to be able to stay somewhere locally? Is there an alternative for them to stay with one of their colleagues who doesn't use the train to get to work, who perhaps drives, or that they can walk from? Is there a willingness for the place of work, and it won't be appropriate for all places of work, but to be able to assist that to happen? So if you've got a key member of staff and you're going to have a problem if they don't come into work, is it cheaper for you to facilitate some method for them to stay over locally and therefore avoid the use of the train? And that won't work in all circumstances, but it's worth sometimes just having that look at that, because sometimes it will be the cost of you not being there, and the impact that's going to have on my business is far greater than me helping you out to arrange somewhere for you to stay, or me being flexible or whatever to enable you to be at work rather than be off work. And the bottom line is, if somebody says to you, I can't come to work because of the train, you are not responsible for paying their wages. The bottom line is, if they have endeavoured to find other methods to coming into work and that isn't feasible or isn't available, my heart would say to them, I'll say to you at least, that the right thing to do probably isn't to discipline them for unauthorised, unpaid absence. Because this is, if they haven't tried very hard and there is an alternative, you could argue that you would. But really, for people who are, for no fault of their own, unable to use their normal method of transport, for me, it is authorised unpaid absence, that they are unable to come to work on those days. But they shouldn't expect to be paid by you for those days that they don't turn up at work. And as I say, I would like to think that people would want to talk to you about alternatives and what can be done to work that around, because they don't want to lose money because of no fault of their own. But equally, sometimes people need to have the confidence to have the conversation, don't they? So, well, so-and-so will bring you in, or, we'll swap shifts so that you can work with somebody that can bring you in, or we can look to see what it would cost for you to stay locally so that you don't need the train. These conversations need to happen, because I don't think this is going to be the only week that we have strikes. I suspect this is going to go on, and therefore the impact will get greater and greater and greater. No, you're more than welcome. That's exactly what we're here for. So keep them